Okay, guys, this is reading class for Wednesday. We are going to be reading a very short passage called How Lewis Discovered Alice by Kimberly M. Hutmacher. So you're going to definitely need this worksheet, whether it's printed out or if you're just looking at it through a computer and writing down the answers on a notebook, that's totally fine. Okay, so Alice in Wonderland. We know this story. It's by a man named Lewis Carroll. Fun fact, his real name is actually Charles Lutwidge Dodgson, and Lewis Carroll is just his pen name, his author name. In this novel, it was actually a book first. It was published in 1865, and of course, there's also a Disney movie on it now. Now we're going to be reading basically about how this man got the idea to create the story that is Alice in Wonderland. Okay, so let's go ahead and read this. And as always, I would like to encourage you to do this on your own first, and then play the video to go over the answers together. All right. Lewis Carroll, who was born Charles Lutwidge Dodgson, had a terrible stuttering problem. Because of this problem, even as an adult, Charles felt more comfortable around children than adults. Charles loved to tell and write stories, and he found that children loved to hear his stories. So before we move on, stuttering is basically a condition where the person speaks with a repetition of words. It's a condition, and it looks like Mr. Lewis Carroll had this stuttering problem. Okay. On July 4th, 1862, Charles went on a picnic with some friends up the Isis River. So just as a visual, this is the Isis River in England, and he was having a picnic there. One of the children on the picnic was a 10-year-old girl named Alice. Alice begged Charles to tell her one of his stories. So he began telling her about a young girl named Alice and her adventures underground. At the end of the day, Alice told Charles that she hoped he would write Alice's stories down for her, and Charles promised her that he would try. 3 years later, to that very day, Alice received her very own copy of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. It wasn't the first book that Charles wrote, but it was the first book that he wrote under the name Lewis Carroll. Awesome. Let's look at the questions. Number 1, what directions answer the questions below? Number 1, what is the author's purpose for writing this? So this goes all the way back to first semester when we talked about author's purpose. Basically, why did the author write this? And I don't want you to get confused here. It's not asking why did Lewis Carroll write Alice in Wonderland, but it's asking why did Kimberly M. Hutmacher write this informative passage called How Lewis Discovered Alice. So why did Miss Kimberly write all of these paragraphs? What was her reason? So you can kind of think of 3 different reasons that authors usually write something. So it's P is for persuade, to convince somebody. Like, I want to convince you that Alice in Wonderland is the best book. I, inform, is to give information, to teach or give information about Alice in Wonderland. E, entertain, is to kind of, just to do it for fun. So to have the reader enjoy the story. We have a little comic here. She's like, oh, what's the author's purpose in writing this story? Maybe he needed the money. Maybe, but we're actually going to be looking more at this information. So we know that in these 3 paragraphs, it looks like she's giving a lot of information, facts, non-fiction facts. Okay, so it's inform, to teach or give information. So let's look at the answer options. A, to explain why Lewis Carroll wrote Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Seems likely. 2, to describe the plot of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So plot is basically what it's about, what the book is about. C, to make readers aware of the challenges faced by people with stuttering problems. So to inform readers about the problems that people that stutter face. And D, to explain why Charles Lutwidge Dodson chose the pen name Lewis Carroll. So we got this one is inform. Everything is informed. But why does she write the passage? What's the main idea here? It's actually A, yes, to explain why Lewis Carroll wrote Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. That is our answer. Number 2, when did Charles give Alice her own copy of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland? Write the month, day, and the year. Okay, so let's look back. So again, this is about when Charles gave the book to Alice, not when he met her, not when he went to the picnic, but when did he give it? So we got to do a little bit of digging here. Well, we know that they met on July 4th, 1862. And then it says here, 3 years later, to that very day, Alice received her own copy. So to that very day means the month and the day were the same. It's just the years that's different. So we know it's July 4th. But what is the year? It's 3 years later they met. So 1862 plus 3 years, 1865. That is the day that Alice received her very own copy of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, okay? Number 3, how old was Alice when she received her copy? So how old was she when she received the book written by Lewis Carroll? Let's see. 3 years later, to that very day, Alice received her very own copy of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So again, it doesn't really tell us exactly how old she was, so we got to do a little bit more of digging here. Well, paragraph 2 says, one of the children on the picnic was a 10-year-old girl. 10-year-old girl named Alice. Okay. And then 3 years later, she gets the book. So 10 plus 3, she was 13 years old when she received the book. Incorporating some math into reading class. Number 4, which word probably best describes Charles Lutwidge Dodson? So what kind of person is this man? Just by reading these 3 paragraphs, what kind of guy is this man? Is he courageous, creative, or confident? It's possible that he's all 3, but right now we're basing on the 3 paragraphs here. So courageous means to be brave, right? Creative means that you have good imagination and you're able to come up with original ideas, usually in art. Confident is being sure of yourself, you know that you can do it. Being self-assured. So which word here do you think describes this man the most? I would actually say creative, because, and this is the important part, why did you choose this word? You have to be able to explain why you chose that. And when they ask questions like why did you choose this word, it's good to give examples from the text. So let's look for some examples where he was creative. Well, a girl named Alice just asked him to tell her a random story, and he was able to come up with this story just on the spot about her, right? He was able to be creative and use his imagination to come up with the story. So we can write that. I chose this word because so something along those lines. Just tell me why you think he was creative, okay? Okay, number 5. Write whether each sentence is true or false. So, First one, Charles Lovett Dodson's first book was Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Be careful here. Let's look here. It wasn't the first book that he wrote. Okay? It was just the first book with his new name. So it's actually false. Next we got, Alice asked Charles to write down his stories. Let's see. At the end of the day, Alice told Charles that she hoped he would write Alice's stories down for her. So yes, Alice did ask Mr. Charles to write down the story. True. And the last question of reading class. True or false? Alice's Adventures in Wonderland was written over 140 years ago. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to do some more math. Let's see how long ago this book was written. Well, it was written in, well, he met the girl in 1862. And he wrote it 3 years later. So he wrote it in 1865. So we're going to be doing 2020 minus 1865. This is the year right now. So 2020 minus 1865 is 155 years ago. So yes, true. It was written over 140 years ago. Okay, great job. That is a short history of how Alice in Wonderland was written by a man named Lewis Carroll. Super cool story. And great job again. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.